Welcome to I'll Marry You, a podcast with me, Olivia Coleman, full of tips and tricks from the UK wedding scene, interviews with industry experts, and a whole lot of oversharing. I'm not sure how magic producer Drew is when it comes to his editing skills. He's pretty good, but I do just want to caveat this entire episode by saying that I'm recording at 3:15 on a school day, and I live between two high schools, and I can already hear the youths of today as they pass by my house, probably vaping, swearing, shouting. Okay, so hopefully you won't hear that. But if you do, apologies, it's not my child. Welcome to a new episode of the I'll Marry You podcast with me, Olivia Coleman. I hope you're well. I don't want to talk bollocks for 10 minutes like I would do ordinarily, even though I think that that's the bit you secretly quite like, because today's episode is going to be useful, okay? It's going to be brief and it's going to be useful, much like making love when fertile. So apologies in advance if you're looking forward to some nonsense. As you can tell from everything I've already said, this is an incredibly serious episode. Today, I want to talk about how to write your own wedding vows. So a lot of my couples have been asking recently about writing their own vows. It's becoming a lot more common in English wedding ceremonies. I think it was always an American thing to do because if we're going to generalize, Americans generally are a lot better at, being open with their feelings than us Brits. We don't like, us British, we don't like to stand there and talk about how we feel, especially in front of people. That's why we're so anti-therapy even in 2026. But it is becoming more of a thing over here. And so I thought I would help you by throwing out a few of the rules that I would share with my couples on how to write your own wedding vows. First and foremost, why do you want to write your own vows? Okay, you're planning a wedding. It's a big deal. You're probably moving house and giving birth at the same time, which is something that everyone seems to do. I think it's nesting. Why do you want to write them? Think about that, because actually it will require effort. It is another thing to tick off your to-do list. Do you have the time to do it? I don't think it's something that can be rushed. I don't think it's something that has to take forever. But I think if you're hesitant, don't, especially if you're having a celebrant ceremony, because the entire ceremony is personalized. Everything is about you. Everything is unique to you two people and your story, your feelings, your memories, your emotions. So you don't need personalized vows to have a personalized ceremony. However, if you've thought about it and you decided that this is something you would like to do, then hopefully these top tips will help. I'm going to be concise. I'm going to be to the point, because this is an episode that I want to share with the world, that I want you to share with your friends and your family and your couples. If you're a planner, I want you to share this so that hopefully it will help people when it comes to writing your own vows, because I know that people find it overwhelming and intimidating. And whenever I say to a couple, do you want to write your own vows? And they say yes, they immediately say, but how? How on earth? Where do I even start? So hopefully this will help. These are my rules. These are my thoughts, my opinions. So please do with them what you will, because at the end of the day, writing your own wedding vows is such a personal thing. So you have to do whatever feels right for you too. The first thing to do after you have both, okay, you have to both, you can't strong arm them into doing this if they don't want to. The first thing that you both have to decide upon, sit down and decide upon, is your structure. I think it's really important to have an outline of what your vows are going to be and have both of your vows match that outline. If you're struggling with where to even begin, and if you're not a natural writer, then having a structure will help implement the rest of the content. It will help you focus the more emotive content into something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So decide on a structure. I will go into that in a minute. But also, I would say recommended word count between 200 and 400 words, which tends to be about 3 minutes. I think wedding vows should be short and sweet. This is not a speech. This is not a monologue. This is not a performance through Shakespeare. These are wedding vows, and I think less is more. It's a deeply, deeply personal thing. You're not going to be able to say it all. There's no way. You're marrying this person. You must have a bounty of emotions and stories and memories and feelings to share. You can't share everything, okay? So don't worry about that. Don't feel overwhelmed with the amount that you want to say and the amount that you want to get out there, because you can't get it all out there. So just try and keep it simple and concise and to the point, whilst also being romantic and wonderful and fun. Decide on structure, decide on a maximum-ish word limit. And that does mean that you might have to practice saying it out loud, because obviously everyone's different. Some people speak a lot faster, and some people will sort of recite it word for word, and others will sort of maybe improv a bit on the day. Once you have decided on your structure, then you can separate from each other. You can go off and you can write your wedding vows. The structure that I would recommend would be, and still within the sort of 3 minute time frame, would be a personal anecdote, a personal story, something telling people something about you yourself, how you met them, how you fell in love with them, what today means. A little moment for that, perhaps maybe 100 words, 150 words, and then go into 3 vows or 3 promises. You can call them what you want. Some people don't like the word vow. I think that, it can sound quite, it can sound quite oldie worldy. I vow to draw swords at dawn. Don't say that. Do you know what I mean? So you have to use the words that feel comfortable to you. So you have got your structure. You've got a personal moment at the beginning, and then you've got 3 vows and all promises. I think 3 is the magic number. 1, pointless. 2, missing something. 3, perfect. 4, all right. 5, calm down. 6, get a room. 7, I'm over it. I'm bored. I'm out. Lost interest. 3. And when you've got a structure, then you can really begin to write. So here we go. Are you ready? Are you listening? Rule number 1, set the scene. Okay. I know it sounds a little bit wanky, but what you're doing is creative and vulnerable and emotional, and you're not going to get the best writing if you're sat at your desk on your lunch break, or if you're in the pub, or if you're on a packed train commuting from work, typing it out on your phone. Like, that's just you're not going to get the best stuff. Notes, if an idea comes to you at some point, random, pop a note down your phone by all means. But if you decide that you want to sit down and write your vows in sort of one go, or at least attempt to do it in one go, then you need to set the scene. So again, it does sound a bit wanky, but I like to make sure my house is tidy. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I do. I like to have a tidy house, maybe light a candle, put some music on, have a cup of tea. Like, just make sure that you're in a space that feels safe and familiar, where you feel comfortable, where you feel able to open up. There's a reason, that therapists have nice sofas and and lovely interiors, because you don't want to open a prison cell. So think about setting the scene. Maybe have a glass of wine, maybe have 3. Okay, be honest with yourself. Loose lips sink ships, but also write good vows. So rule number 1 is set the scene. Rule number 2, touched on this before, but you cannot sum up every moment, every memory, every story in your wedding vows. You just can't. Whether you've been together 2 years or 20 years, you're going to have so many memories and so many stories and wonderful little tidbits and anecdotes. Oh, remember that time there, and that restaurant we went to there, and that holiday over there. And there's all these things to think about, but you can't fit it all in. So don't cry, otherwise it will overwhelm you. you don't feel like, oh, I don't want to miss that out, or oh my God, that was so funny when she said that, or that memory is so that lives in my heart rent free. Like I get it and it's beautiful. And again, share it with your celebrant. When my couples, I ask so many deeply personal questions and my couples tell me everything and I use it in the ceremony. So again, the ceremony is personalized, especially with a celebrant ceremony. But with your vow, there are other opportunities. You can write a card, you can do a speech. Keep this short and simple and don't let the idea that you have to include everything that you've ever done with this person overwhelm you, because it will overwhelm you. And when you're thinking of stories, don't necessarily think of the specific story. It was a sunny Sunday morning and we woke up and we went for a walk and we got the papers and then we came home and we read them by the fire or whatever. Um, Instead of thinking of the specifics of a memory, think about how that memory made you feel. So when you're thinking of that sunny Sunday morning, don't think of the specifics. Think, okay, why was that such a lovely morning? Why do I have that memory over others that has stayed with me? Think about how you felt in that moment, what they were doing that made you feel that way. Did you feel safe? Do you feel supported? If you're thinking about a time that, you lost a parent or someone close to you died and they were there for you and it meant everything that they were there for you. You don't have to stand there in front of all your guests during a wedding vows and saying, when my dad died, you were incredible. Like it doesn't have to be that specific or literal. So instead you reword that into the emotion, which is your loyalty and your support and your unwavering love and commitment, Instead of saying, when my dad died, you were there for me, you say, when I'm down, you make me a cup of tea and your cuddles and your touch, like just the feeling of having your hand on the small of my back makes me feel like it's going to be okay. I'm getting emotional. So that's rule number 2. You can't include everything, so don't try. It'll overwhelm you. Think about how each story makes you feel and then write down those words and use that. Rule number 3, the opening section. So following on from my last point, you can't include it all. Perhaps there is one moment in particular that you would like to include. Perhaps you could start with something like, the moment I knew that you would be the person I wanted to marry was when we were skiing and I fell over and it was arse over tit on the slopes, and a ski school of 10 little French buggers came skiing up behind me and landed into my back, and it was absolute carnage and chaos, and there was children crying all over the slopes, and you just sat there with your rosé from the cafe and laughed at me. Like something like that. It's very quick, it's very brief. If you want to start with a story like that in the opening section, great. Otherwise, you could say something about when you first met. So your opening line could literally be, Liv, when I first met you, etc., etc., etc. Liv, as I stand here on our wedding day, there are a million reasons why I want to marry you. You are X, you are Y, you are blah, blah. Try and think of an opening sentence and then personalize it. So you can start with a story or an anecdote, but keep it brief and make sure it's one that is less about the specifics and more about the emotion behind the story. Rule number 4, the 3 vows or promises after the initial sort of anecdote. Simple, emotive, honest, vulnerable, but I quite like them when they're light, not funny. Okay. At no point when you're writing your vows should you be like, oh my God, that's really going to get the crowd going. This is not that, okay? This is not your wedding speech. These are your vows. So whilst they can be light and fun, and perhaps, oh, that's funny. No one should be laughing out loud. This should not be hysterical, especially if it's at the expense of your partner, okay? This is not the moment for that. So what I mean by that is, instead of saying, don't take the piss. So instead of saying, I promise to rub your feet even though you've got terrible bunions. Like, not the time, not the time. Instead, you say, I promise to rub your feet when you've had a hard day. Can you kind of weird bit? What is marriage without a little white lie? Might as well start that in the bloody wedding vows. Hey. Um, there is a thing that a teacher friend of mine called a ship sandwich, which is when you are talking about a child and you have to say a positive and negative and then a positive. So the bread is the positive and the filling is the negative. So, for example, a teacher might have said to me in my youth, Liv is so wonderfully enthusiastic. She's not very good at spelling or doing anything academic, but she is such fun to have in class. Do you see what I did there? You brush over it. You brush over the shit. So, for example, and I don't mean say anything negative. We've covered you're not allowed to take the piss. However, something a bit light. So something more serious and vulnerable, and then something a bit lighter, and then something more serious again to finish on. And I think in terms of the structure with this, you should both have the same structure. So it should literally be something as simple as you've done your story, and then on having said that, or on today, our wedding day, I would like to promise you this. Today, as I stand here, these are my vows. Okay. And then you would literally, I promise to. So, for example, you could say, today on our wedding day, I would like to promise you this. I promise to fight for you, to support you and encourage you and remind you every day how utterly magnificent you are. I promise to cry and hold my tongue when you insist on putting the dirty dishes next to the dishwasher rather than in it. I promise to love you in every form, through every phase, whether it be easy or hard, whether life throws us challenges, when we succeed, when we fail, when you are at your lowest and at your highest. I promise to love you, every version of you, till the day I die. Just made that up, didn't research, didn't write that in advance. So can you see how it flows? So you've got your story, and then you do something serious, and then something a bit lighter, and then something a bit more romantic. Always end on the romance, I think. Always end on the vulnerability. I think what's really important is that you, like I say, it's not a stand-up comedy bit. You're not trying to entertain the crowd. Do not worry about inside jokes. This is a moment for inside jokes. It doesn't matter if everyone every one of the guests doesn't understand what you're saying. It doesn't matter if you mumble. It doesn't matter if you whisper them and no one else can hear. This is not for anyone else except the person you're talking to and possibly the videographer, if I'm being honest, because then you do want to hear it afterwards, but you'll be mic'd up, so it'll be fine. Don't worry about including things that are really personal. If you a nickname for them, call them that during the vows. There is no way. I mean, don't mention sex or anything sort of bum related. Not sex bum. I'm getting off piste. Don't like I say, don't take the piss. Don't be crude, and that's coming from me, and I'm queen of that. But don't be crude. Don't be crass. Be kind. Be loving. This is your opportunity to say all of the wonderful things that you think about this person, and you're not there to entertain the people. You are there to publicly say all these incredible things and to share openly how you feel about this person. And that's not to say that if you are not super duper romantic and mushy and first of all, if you're not, you probably won't want to write your own vows anyway. But secondly, if you are writing your own vows and the idea of standing there and saying really lovey-dovey stuff makes you feel uncomfortable, because that might just not be who you are, that might just not be your relationship, then don't take the piss and don't go overly funny and don't silly and ironic. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to stand there and say, I promise to hold your hand till the day we die together, side by side, like on the Notebook. But also don't be like, I promise to wipe your ass when you've got the ruts. Instead, find a happy medium. Like, I promise to make you a cup of tea every morning. I promise to tell you that your hair looks good even when you haven't washed it for 2 days. Like, it can be funny and light without being crass or crude or taking the piss. Be kind. Be nice. So you've got your structure. You've got your anecdote, you've got your 3 promises or vows, you've got the exact things that you need to do, you've set the scene, you've got your pen and paper, go old school. Try and write them. Just write them. There's no pressure. You can write them a million times, okay? It doesn't matter. And in next week's episode, I told you I'm going to keep this brief because I want this to be shared with people. And let's be honest, no one wants to listen to more than 20 minutes of me talking when it's going to probably go viral at this rate. So those are my rules, and I hoped it helped. And then next week's episode, I'm going to talk again into what you do once you've written them. So how to perform them, type them up rather than on phone. Do not read them off your phone. And also traditional options of vows as well. So the alternative options that you can have. So I hope this helps if you're going to write your own vows. Those are the rules. Follow them. Send this to the person that doesn't really want to write their own vows. Okay? And I hope it helps. See you next Tuesday.
Thank you so much for listening. It really does mean the world. If you find this podcast even remotely helpful or moderately entertaining, share with all your friends and family. You can DM me any questions, queries, if you want to share any stories on the podcast Instagram at I'll Marry You Podcast. Get in touch. I want to hear all your tall tales. See you soon.
I'll Marry You is a podcast by Olivia Coleman. The music is Mr. Sunnyface by Wayne Jones, and the show is produced and edited by Drew Toynbee.